beginning part of it pretty quickly. This is just a little bit to give you about the Roanoke Times, to give you kind of a baseline of where we are. Some of it's a little bit of a commercial about what we do here, but this gives you a sense of what what we'd say a mid-sized daily newspaper is undergoing in America right now. Lots of challenges, and of course we're looking for answers in digital. This happens to be a huge year for the Roanoke Times and Roanoke.com, our website, because we are rebuilding everything from the ground up. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that. But where we are digitally, how we come across on your phone, on a tablet, on the website will be different this time next year, I can guarantee it. So I guess things to note here is we are traditionally, we cover a huge area from Lexington to Galax. We used to have a bureau in Stanton. We're just, Southwest Virginia has been the traditional footprint of this paper, and it's 125 years old. That was last year. And right now we have journalists, about 90 journalists in our newsroom. Like I said, new things happening this year. We just came out with the iPad edition of the paper, and it is truly an electronic version of the paper. It is PDFs that are assembled of each page at night, and then you can download it in the morning. Has anybody seen it? I don't know if you've talked before him. It's interesting that there are two different versions of kind of tablet apps or iPad apps floating around out there. This version is literally the paper digitally transferred. Others are more dynamic, and they're updated as they go, and they have a kind of a navigation that is a bridge between a website and the newspaper. We'll get there. I think we'll offer both versions. If you find this in the iTunes store right now, you'll see it labeled as a replica app, and that means it's a replica of the newspaper. Right now that app is available only to subscribers, so you have to have already had a kind of a customer relationship with us, and you get this thrown in for free. In the next month, sometime this spring, we'll also offer it to people that you can just buy it through the iTunes store and not have any print subscription tied to it. So that is coming. There's also this thing we call the e-paper that's on the far right. If you're just sitting there on your desktop and you want to also get the digital version of the paper, you can also, same access. If you're already a subscriber, that's for free. And we find a lot of people were asking us for this years ago because they travel and they want to keep up with the paper. What you'll hear overwhelmingly, and what we really are keeping in mind in redesigning our website is the website has too much on it. I can't find it. And the big thing that we do in print that we lose sight of some of the great things about print when we're chasing digital, the print newspaper has this beautiful hierarchy to it. You know what the front page is, you know what the most important story is. You get that sense of, as you go deeper into the newspaper, the stories may drop off, at least in that A section, of what the most important news of the day is. You go to most newspaper websites, and you just see like 25 stories. You're not really sure what the big story is because they're constantly churning through. We'll keep that in mind when we redesign our website to give you some of that hierarchy and all the really kind of design cues that we built over 125 years of print. That has to translate over into those websites. Because keep in mind, websites did not come up out of a design background. There were people doing code trying to get information out very quickly. And I think you're seeing new versions of papers all the time. If you see Boston or the New York Times, Washington Post are some big ones that have just gone through these major changes to try to keep up with that. And then, mobile, right now we have kind of a homegrown. If you go to m.roanoke.com, you'll see our homegrown mobile version that we're working on it, but it's our first kind of place out of the gate. And the traffic for that has been very, very strong. Again, people were asking for that from us before we could even get around to doing it, so that's very encouraging. So if you're really into website design and what people are thinking, and you go on these sites and you want to weigh in, we started this blog, it was at the end of January, Refresh RT. You can also follow it on Twitter. The whole point of this to me is we wanted to be able to say this is going to be a huge change to what we're doing. We want it to be transparent. We want you as the users to be able to weigh in way ahead of time as to what you like or don't like about the site, and also transparent to our own staff, because we use that site every day. So believe me, we know the warts and all the problems with it. So it's been this huge collaboration of asking the public, what do you like? And then you'll also see layers of the staff coming in, because we went out and asked every team, sports, features, opinion, news, photo, what do you guys want from a site? And as you can imagine, the photographers want all pictures, they want the website, all pictures. Sports wants the front page to be sports. They want the news like 2 seconds ago. So there's all these little competing tribes, and they all have dreams for what the website can be. But it's been fascinating to watch this conversation kind of play out in blogs and on this blog, and we've learned some things. I think, my biggest takeaway right now is Facebook Connect is not the way to go for comments. Because we've heard very strongly that people say, if you make me sign in and log in through comments using Facebook Connect, I'm out of here. I don't want my face attached to that. And I understand that because where I come from in the world of the internet, I love anonymity. There are people who hate it, think it's the worst thing about the internet. Anonymity to me is the spirit of the internet, what it came out of it. People were free and able to not worry about their position in society. It was their ideas that counted. That made some people see that as still very naive today, but I think using better moderation tools and actually having what I always say is a parent in the room who's watching those comments, you can manage the trolls and still keep a very nice conversation. And it may mean if you're going to post an anonymous comment, you're going to have to wait for us to moderate it, look at it, make sure you're not saying something that's going to get me sued. And it'll take a little while for your comment to get up, but it's still anonymous, you still have that freedom there. So I think we'll end up with a system that's going to be a combination of, if you want to post through Facebook, you want to do through your Twitter account, you can do that. But if you still want to stay anonymous or have your, whatever your online name is, the Masked Avenger or whatever, you can do it through here. Again, we keep adding blogs that keep popping up all over the site, so you can see just a huge range of from sports to street fashion to restaurant openings. And the traffic on this has been one of the big growth areas on our site because it does have that personality and because there are so many conversations happening around that these blogs, especially the hardcore blog readers, are an extension of our reporting. If you look at the restaurant openings, for example, that blog, the reporters typically, she may be out driving around seeing the restaurant and she doesn't know who owns it or what's going on, so she'll put a question out to her readers and her readers will give her some information to go on. This isn't printed in the paper as fact, but it helps move the journalism along because sometimes the readers have more information than we do. Imagine that. That's a hard thing for journalists to get their heads around, that readers can help contribute and move the story along, and we have to trust them and trust that they know the rules of the game. If somebody, again, these are moderated conversations, so if somebody posts something really wacky in there, we're looking at it before we're approving those comments. But if it looks legit, we've kind of checked it out, we're going to post it and move the story along. And that's that whole movement of user submissions, user content, readers weighing in. They're helping the journalism, and it's not just a be-all and end-all. Which brings me to these publications. The latest that we did was down in this part of our circulation area, the burbs. One of the foundations of these community publications is to take stories, photos, community events from readers and publish them. We publish them first in print, and then we kind of prioritize out. We publish first online, and then we prioritize out of that, and they go into tabloids that, tinier papers, broad tabloid papers, that in some markets go to everybody in the zip code. Here right now it's only going to subscribers. You'll see the verbs. But at least 3/4 of the content knows is provided from the public and helping the journalism. These are community publications. This is not investigative journalism here, but it is very important to the community. Events that are happening, fundraisers, really the things that keep a community together and provide that social web. You see them in these publications. And I really believe in these. I got my start in community publications back in Tampa, and a lot of that, I could see the beauty in having these community publications really support and help build a community. But at the time, in that era of journalism, we didn't trust the public sending stuff in, and at that point, we published maybe 1/20th of what the public sent in. We really felt like we had to go out there and report it originally ourselves, and we found reasons not to print what the public was sending us because we were kind of, I think, very much snobbish back then. Now the doors are wide open, and you certainly have the tools out there to take pictures and get that content into us much more quickly. Oops. If you're on Twitter, and I hope you are, if you're into journalism, you better be, so I'll tell you right now. These are just some, following us locally. Roanoke Times is our main account that we can push out headlines there. Roanoke Times is live, is fairly new, just a couple weeks old. We started that with the coverage of the Virginia Tech trial a few weeks ago. We're going to use that account to really kind of flood the zone when there are big events. We'll use that account to just constantly be live tweeting. It could be in a courtroom, it could be at a breaking news scene. If you're really a super hardcore news junkie, you want to follow Roanoke Times Live. Berg's NRV is, again, associated with our publication and our website in this community. And that's me, so you're welcome to interact with me there. We also have at least, I think last count, 40-something people on staff that are also on Twitter and learning to use it and benefiting from that experience. But back here, Twitter, we talked about headlines with personality and insight. We try to not just have this robot that's pumping out headlines. We're selectively choosing what we're sending out on Twitter. Facebook will selectively choose what goes on to Facebook because that's a conversation. You kind of think of what are the stories that are going to be the talker. No surprise, again, restaurants. You post a restaurant review, people love to weigh in because they have their own expertise. They've eaten there, they want to talk about it. So you'll see a lot of features in sports, and then sometimes the hot news story of the day will go up on Facebook, and we'll kind of judge our success there by how many times people have shared the story, and then commented on it. There's this whole burgeoning world of what we call analytics. It's studying what happens when we socially move our content out. Which brings me to new jobs. I figure you guys want to know this if you're getting into journalism and then you're thinking about this as a career. There are many, many new jobs happening in social media. And again, to know that, you first have to be on Facebook, be on Twitter, or really be adept at using it with your friends. But then taking that next step out and saying, okay, as a journalist, what does that mean? First thing I'd say is bring up that code of ethics, because that applies no matter where you are. All of a sudden, you have this mantle of, if you're tweeting from a Roanoke Times account, bring it down. You got to know what you're talking about. You really represent a 125-year-old institution when you put that information out. So if you're making that transition and you want to be a social media editor, you have to think before you tweet or think before you post and really know what that institutional voice should be about. That's the biggest, and it's not a big leap. I think if you read what we're doing on Facebook or Twitter or other larger institutions, you'll see there's a nice voice and how they, we sometimes will hold back and not be the first one tweeting out there because in the social world, you know that news kind of leaks out in little ways an hour or 2 hours before something actually happens. You'll see it out there on Twitter. When we weigh in, we want to be able to say, this is it. It really did happen. We don't want people to feel like we're burned. And if anything, our brand is so much more important when you take it into social media. We really want you to believe it when we put it out there. So it's a lot of, in that kind of a job, it's the social media editor, looking at what's out there and trying to figure out who should I retweet, who has good credibility, and really kind of having a street sense that typically does you really well as a reporter. Now you're in the office and you have to kind of apply that same street sense without the benefit of how you get someone. So it makes it that much more complicated. So Stephanie Ogilvy, she's the one who's behind the Roanoke Times Twitter and Facebook accounts most weekdays. She was formerly our calendar editor. So she saw we went to her basically and saw a new opportunity for her, and she's self-taught, learned a lot on her own. Dayside copy editor, another new kind of job. Copy editors traditionally worked at night. They waited for the whole production schedule of print, and then they got this big, massive shove of copy, and they, fine-tuned it and got it ready for print. Now we're talking about an online first world where everything goes to the website and then goes to print. Well, you need copy editors there to catch that copy as it comes in and then it gets pushed onto the website. That'll be the biggest change from where we are, the Roanoke Times, this year to next year, and a lot of papers are in the midst of that transition. Bringing copy editors in the day side and vetting content before it goes up. That's very different than our blogs. Our blogs, if you're writing the blog, if you're the author of the blog, you're writing it, and chances are it's going up directly without an editor behind you looking at it. That was a big, world change, again, in the industry, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, people couldn't imagine that you would actually write something and it would get posted without anybody looking over your shoulder. Now it's routine, and we just, again, we have to trust the professionals that we hire to do that job. And if they have a question, they know they have to ask an editor, can you come by and look at this? I get those questions a couple times a week of, is this okay? And it's usually more sensitive issues. Community content manager, that's another position, also a dayside position because things are happening during the day. This person works mostly on the verbs. She's getting content that is sent in from the public, so there's this big kind of catch basin of, okay, there's all this stuff that just came in from the public, there's pictures from a parade, there's announcement of a city council meeting next week on something. Parents will, once we, they know that we're interested, they may send us 500 pictures from some sporting event. So we have to kind of send them off to Flickr and say, go post your stuff over to Flickr, and we'll pull a couple from there. They get very excited. So it's kind of managing the content coming in from the public and then making that cut as to what's actually going to go in print. And the amazing transition with this online first model, everybody knows anybody can publish online, right? You all are publishers. Every day that you're online and you're hitting that button, you are publishing. Okay, the power of publishing, beautiful thing is everybody can do it. That's what I love about the internet. It's so democratic. You can get your ideas out there, no problem. The thing that newspaper folks like myself have to really appreciate is we do have an authority that we put on content that the public respects. We don't publish everything in print. We can't just because of space, and that gives it this higher value. So for the example with the community publications, we've had 10-year-olds send in pictures of events that are happening in class. Okay, they figure it out. They get the publication at home. They can type in an email. Here's a picture of me doing something at school. And we'll reply to them and say, hey, we posted it on our website. We posted it on the Burbs. We posted it on So Salem. And they'll say, yeah, that's great, but when's it going to be in the paper? If you get a 10-year-old interested in when's it going to be in the paper, that totally blew my mind. But they know there's a cut. They know the internet's everything, and there's a cut for paper. That gives me great hope for the future that there's going to be print. There is going to be a print something. It may not actually be print that you're grabbing, but it'll be a print field. There will be that cut and culling because there is so much on our website and there is so much on the internet. What the public will pay us for still is that culling down, sifting, going through information, and really figuring out what's important out of all this because there's too much information. Okay, so transition. I figured you're here, hopefully you're in journalism, you're going to pursue this great career, and I wanted to just pass on a couple points that are relevant whether you're going to be in print journalism or online journalism, public relations, marketing. Hopefully this will do you well no matter what job you're going to have. And every time I flash something up here that you've heard a professor say, you're supposed to buy them a cup of coffee or something next time you see them at the student center. Because you will have heard all this stuff. And the biggest one, Mark Cuban. Who likes Mark Cuban? Anybody? One? He's got a very big mouth and he can dance. So, he says in a recent blog post, the idea you don't live in the world you're born in. And you may think you know everything about technology where you are today. That's great. Don't stay frozen in time. The biggest problem I see with people adjusting to the future or their careers kind of hitting these walls are, I've learned all I can, I don't want to learn anymore. You have to be this kind of continuous learner and realize I may hire you as a reporter, but in 3 years from now, I need you to be the dayside content flipper. I don't know, I make up some word because the technology has changed and I need a new job to get this thing done. Just know you're in journalism. You're along for the ride. Don't get so focused on what you're doing now, that particular job. Be flexible. Be part of this beautiful machine of a media organization and see yourself in many roles. Don't get into one thing for forever because, if that one thing is not what's needed right now and it's going to get replaced, then you're out of a job. And sorry to say, in the past, particularly last 5 years, I've seen many, many talented journalists get laid off just because of this reason. They could only do one thing, and that one thing was getting replaced by something else, whether it was technology or the public was now providing this information. You know, look ahead on the horizon and just roll with it. Again, this is invest in yourself. You know, sometimes people will, you know, they'll complain that we don't have as much training. We don't send people off to week-long training at journalism institutes like we used to in the good old days. And I have to just say, you know, you all at this stage, you really need to think that training has to come from yourself. You know, you need to say, I'm going to teach myself. I'm not going to wait for an employer to give me that training. What is out there? Because particularly with the internet, everything's out there. You know, you don't even need to get subscriptions. Like, yeah, you got to pay for the New Yorker, but just pay for it, get it online, get the app, and read it, especially if you want to be a long-form, long-story journalist. You have to read these stories to get that kind of rhythm and how they can really take a complicated subject matter and just break it apart and keep you engaged. Become a member of these professional organizations. As students, there's usually student rates that are cheaper to join right now. Online News Association, investigative reporters and editors. Crucial. Beginning of your career, must do. Get involved with these groups. They have so many resources and people who are been in the field a long time who want to reach out and want to help you. So, you know, $50, $75 maybe what these things cost. It's really, really great investment. Even if you're not going to be an investigative journalist, that's not your thing, they will teach you a mindset about journalism that will stay with you for forever. University of Barnes & Noble is one of my favorite sayings along this line. It came from Seth Gittner, who used to be one of our multimedia producer, I think was the title then. He left us a few years ago to go teach at Syracuse. And people would ask Seth, well, you know, where did you get your training? How do you know what you know? And he's, you know, he racked up a bunch of online journalism awards in his time with the paper. How did Seth know what he did? When he would say University of Barnes & Noble. He wasn't waiting for somebody to come and teach him things. He said, I know I need to know this stuff, and he was excited about it. This was the new frontier of journalism, and he was leading the way for other people. So, you know, if you have that attitude of, I'm going to go out and find it, and I'm going to ask questions, and you're going to see people who are in jobs that you might like and say, shoot them an email. Hey, I'm a student. How did you get your job? Help me out. People love talking about themselves and how they got where they were, and, you know, it may take a couple tries before you get somebody who you really click with, but you'll find a mentor. You just have to be persistent, really keep asking. Be ambitious. You know, this is where you want to look out to see who is winning awards. If you look at, you know, Pointer, hopefully, the journalism website, they list awards all the time. Who won the journalism awards for pictures or online or just straight up news. Not only see who's winning, because you want to see the papers that are winning the most or still aspiring, they're really aiming high. That's a good place to set your own goal for. But, you know, a lot of them will list the stories that won. Click through and read those stories. You need to study who wins, what makes that cut. And I say that because having judged these contests, you'll sit around and I'll have a stack of 50 stories in some category in contest. You have 50 stories in front of you and you've got like an hour to judge that competition, you can blow through them very, very quickly and see what is truly great. That lead, those first 6 paragraphs, I mean, you just cut right through them. And you read them like a reader reads them. They don't have time. They just need to get in, get out, and what's the best. So study who wins. This is not about, you know, your own ego. It's learning your craft and looking at other winners will really, really, really help you in the long run. And in many markets, you know, in our market, we don't have a daily paper that we're competing against. When I worked in Tampa, we had the St. Petersburg Times was across the bay, so we were competing head-to-head on stories every day. And I could look at you know, I would go to an event and cover it, and then I'd see what the St. Pete reporter did. So we could always check each other. We always knew who was doing what, and you learn from that competition. Those, you know, head-to-head competition in journalism today is very, very rare. So who are you competing against? Not really sometimes the TV stations, you know, they're 10 times faster than we are. I will totally admit to that. But for what I say, again, the long-form journalism that we do, you need to see what your peers are doing. And it might be in a paper of the same size 5 states away. What are they doing? Why are they winning awards? What kind of journalism are they doing? They're your competition. They're your peers, and look out for them. This is, again, for everybody. If you're thinking like an entrepreneur, that you're knowing business, and I mean that is you're taking business classes in journalism or in college while you're here now. You know, I think I went to journalism school at West Virginia University, and they made us take econ to graduate, and I dreaded those classes. I kept putting it off, and I knew I still have these anxiety dreams that I'm not going to graduate because I had one econ class the last semester of my senior year, and if I didn't pass that, I wasn't going to graduate. A lot of pressure. But I draw on that just basic econ all the time. In my position, so much of what I'm doing now is business oriented. But as a reporter, you're going to be out there talking to business people, reading micro, macro, trying to get all those big concepts and bringing them down for readers. It's very, very important to have that basic understanding of business before you get out of college. And then know our business, know the journalism business. Again, I was not alone in this, but many, many journalists really had no idea how we made money in journalism. You know, that was for the business office, for the advertising side. Other parts of the company knew how much money to charge customers, how much to charge ad rates, had more of a business strategic plan going on, and then it all kind of ran around in 2005. And all of a sudden, all these journalists woke up and they're like, dang, they're laying people off and papers are closing, and what happened? And we all kind of woke up out of our slumber like, well, we should have been paying attention to the business side all along, instead of just letting somebody else take care of it. So, you know, if you're starting from the very beginnings, you know, ask the questions. Hopefully, if you're fortunate, our company, our publisher, will go out and talk to people and say, this is what's going on with our earnings, and try to engage folks in what those financial terms mean. If you go to work for a company that's publicly traded, if you're at Gannett, for example, you can look at their quarterly earnings. They're boring, yeah, but try to understand them. Try to read at least the analysis that comes out afterwards. Understand your business so you're not caught like my generation of, we had no idea what was going on until it was really, the house was burning down around us. And if you do that, we'll have a better, a stronger foundation, I think, in the future if we think like business people and journalists. And that's not to say it's affecting our credibility, it just makes us smarter people. And then for the professors, do everything a professor says. I'm sure they're saying read, write, read, write. Know your style book. Just, you know the language. You're in a communication school. You have to communicate. And how do you do that? You study the good communicators. You find writers that you really like. Find a newspaper, a magazine article that you like. Study it and break it down. Why does that work? You know, think of it analytically. And really soak it up. Because you're here, you know, again, it didn't dawn on me until I was paying student loans years later that I was paying for this. It took me for a while to realize I was paying for college. And there were so many more questions I should have asked professors while I was in college. And how do you do this? And how do you make that work? And how do I get a job? But I didn't take advantage of it until, you know, years later and then calling up. But I had one that kind of took me aside and pointed me in a direction that was very, very influential. And I thank, you know, heavens for that one person seeing something in me. So these folks are here and they're, you know, you may get tired of them saying the same thing, but they're right. So listen to them. That's my spiel. But time for questions.
Questions? Come on.
basic, you're going to start off as a journalist that way. If you don't love it, there's not something about it that you love, and don't do it. It's too hard to just be like plodding around. And you've got a smart brain, you then go off and be a lawyer and make more money. But if you, if you really love it, it's a great, great job, and you'll never use it. Ariel, the front here.
What are you looking for when you're hiring people, and what do they have to have for you to want to hire them?
It depends on the job. As a reporter, of course, we're looking for clips, stuff that you've written in other daily newspapers. But increasingly, we're looking for, do you have a presence online? Do you have your own website? You may have your own blog. Are you connected in through Facebook and Twitter? And I'm not saying that because it's a flavor of the week, social media, everybody should be in on it. If you look at even the usage of Twitter among minority communities, it may be higher in some communities. That Twitter, if that's where the minority community is really using socially there more so than Facebook, and you're a crime reporter, a cops reporter, and that community is more affected by crime, you need to be on Twitter because people are going to engage with you there. You need to go where the community is interacting. And through social media, you'll find these little pockets of interactivity. It may be Facebook for this community that you're covering. It may be Twitter for this community. It may be this blog over here for this other community. You don't know where these communities are going to pop up, and that's why as a reporter, you have to be very flexible with and just know whatever the next thing is happening. It may be Pinterest now, There may be some hard news story that comes out of Pinterest, the Pinterest murder. Imagine that. But man, if you don't know Pinterest, you're totally flat-footed because you never even signed up. You have no idea how to use it. It's very practical for your job. Yeah, it's a hobby, and you may get some enjoyment out of it, but it will help you as a journalist.
How'd you get your first job in journalism?
Well, I told you that professor, that the one who kind of pulled me aside, said I needed to do something. He told me I needed to be a copy editor because I was, back then I actually could spell and I knew grammar. I lost most of that. But he said, hey, you should be a copy editor. I didn't even know what copy editors were. I thought journalism was all about reporting and Woodward and Bernstein and breaking stories. He said, no, you be a copy editor, and you got the talent for it. And here's this Dow Jones Newspaper Fund scholarship that these people will pay you, and they'll give you like $1,000 on top of that. I was like, okay, I'll try that. And the big key thing he said to me is, if you go into copy editing, and it's still pretty true today, you can get to a larger paper and make more money faster because copy editors are always in demand. Pretty much always. The job's changing a lot, I will say that, but they were always in demand, and true enough, I got my first job. I was a Dow Jones Newspaper Fund intern, and through that got into copy editing. Ended up in Montgomery, Alabama, because I was fascinated by the South. And from there, within a year, I was at the Tampa Tribune, so I'd like quadrupled the circulation size of the newspaper I was working at because I was a copy editor.
What's your opinion on learning skills in journalism academically as opposed to learning them in the field?
Give me an example of what you're saying.
Say, what you learn in your classes versus anything you can do on your own. I mean, freelance, for example.
There are things, I'm a big believer in journalism degrees, journalism schools. I think we have a very great tradition in craft, and I hate seeing it watered down into communications programs. I'm a real hardcore believer because the things you can get out of straight up journalism programs are this journalism history classes, journalism ethics classes. It's just the foundation that when you're out freelancing, you're not studying that, you're coming across maybe ethical situations, and you're understanding maybe, oh, this is why I'm doing this because this history built up into that. In college, you have the time to study the history and study the ethics and really think about it and go through these case studies of ethics that when you run across them, you have something to draw back on and go, okay, I remember how in the past they resolved this issue, or I remember this was in, Sullivan versus whatever, they sued over this. I have this to draw
is the house still burning down? And where will we be in 10 years? Where will the Roanoke Times be in 10 years?
The house is still burning down, yeah. And that's mostly because of when I talk about ad revenue, you know, advertisers are changing how they're buying ads. A great example right now, if you guys have paid attention to the JCPenney's ads. Anybody here seen JCPenney? Think they've done something different lately? Maybe you've seen, they've got these crazy ads, ladies looking into the mailbox and she's screaming. They're way out there. JCPenney is a long time advertiser newspapers. They put this thick booklet into the newspapers, and they'd have their little coupons, and they'd tell you where their sales were. And a lot of it was our older readers were really chasing down, looking at those little coupon books, and going out to JCPenney. JCPenney's changing their whole ad strategy, and as a result, we're getting far less money. So these big-time advertisers, Sears, JCPenney, Best Buy, they're all changing. So some of our core financial base is just, you know, beneath our feet. It's falling out. Still burning down, but we do see hope for the future with maintaining the print circulation. And again, in this market, I didn't point out at the very beginning, this is a very a lot of older readers in this market, so print is still relatively strong in this area in comparison to a lot of other parts of the country, which is a great thing. So we're really looking for online to be a future. I won't say the future because, again, we can't pigeonhole ourselves in that. 5 years, we'll certainly still have a print edition of the Roanoke Times. I feel confident in saying that. 10 years, a print version, somehow print. It may not be daily, it may be twice a week. And if it's not legitimately print, it will feel like print, again, in how it's organized, because there's still a lot of people, you know, my age and up are going to be around in 10 years, and that's the way we used to get news. And not underselling that hierarchy that we give content. People will still, as they, even as, you know, as you're starting off now as a kind of a digital child, you'll really appreciate that as you have a family and you're so much more time pressed. You want people just to tell you, what are the top 5 stories in my world? That's what all I need to know today. I don't have time for anything else. That's where we will still definitely have that place and need to capitalize on that.
Well, I've got one. I handled the meeting journal account way back when for about a half dozen years. Seems to me they were in denial when we were talking about a lot of these things, the house burning down. But I was wondering how for the advertising students here, how are you integrating advertisers into the digital arena of your product?
Should I talk about the journal or?
No, just to the right.
Advertising is, that's where really the big change, I think in news, we've kind of figured out what we need to do differently online. You know, we need to get this stuff out faster. That's point one, and then interact with you. Okay, engagement, get the news out faster and engage with people. And have that circle of conversation. News has got that piece figured out. Advertising is still, there's so much to learn about people. And the thing that we've talked about, the promise of the internet, is you can learn so much about your customers. You know, you have the little cookies and the breadcrumbs. If they went here and they went there, and to be able to track them. And a website like ours now, we're really concentrating on knowing you came from this website buying shoes, you're now looking at our website, you still want to keep sending you shoe ads, and then you went off to another site to look at something else. It's that customer behavior and tracking that. It's kind of creepy, yeah, but the internet's creepy if you really get down and think about it. So you got to put that aside and think about good things in the internet. But it's very much looking at individuals, granular, versus this mass market thing where you run this JCPenney ad that every subscriber sees it, whether they care for shopping or not. There's still so much to be learned on that side.
A follow-up question, with the freestanding inserts, is there going to be a drop in the freestanding inserts for advertisers? Or usually in the Sunday, Saturday edition?
The Sunday edition has actually total inserts has held, if not gone up. The Sunday paper right now is a huge success story in the business. Our Sunday circulation is up. A lot of what's driving that is this whole coupon craze. That, you know, extreme couponing, the TV show, and you know, this is not a commercial. I flip coupons, but I always have. I was raised that way. You you do look at the paper, and if you pay attention to coupon, you more than cover the price of your paper. So it's kind of like a, yeah, no kidding. So people are doing crazy things right now to get the Sunday paper, to get it for that coupon value. And a lot of, again, taking a step back as journalists, again, when I talk about, I used to just be the journalist and not pay attention to business, the journalist over here didn't even acknowledge that people got the paper for coupons. They were like, oh, they couldn't possibly read the ads or look at coupons. They're only in it for my story that's like 300 inches long. It took me a whole year to produce. Very much all about me and not thinking about the many, many reasons why people get the paper. And I did want to add something new with advertising that might interest you all. Where I talk about news, there's this growth for social media editors, community content coordinators. Right now, the last 3 hires we made on the digital side are really digital product development. An example of one of these jobs is advising small businesses on what to do with their Facebook pages. Facebook's undergoing lots of changes right now, right? We all know about timeline. If you're a small business and you've even set up a page on Facebook, you're having to deal with some of these changes now. That's been a very economical way of just getting a website up, is just put something on Facebook, you've got your information, your hours. Facebook is changing how it's dealing with that. So we're being a consultant to some of these small businesses, either setting up their own websites with maybe a WordPress background, so it's very easy for them to get in and update their hours or talk to customers. Very, very, very easy back end, and we'll build your website, or we'll help you figure out what you should do on Twitter or Facebook, in more of a consulting role. And then if you want to move up to a print ad in maybe our weekly publications, or then to our big main sheet newspaper, you can do that too. So it's looking at advertising as more as a consultant across media than you're just buying for one product. Again, we had trouble hiring advertising folks who have that background and have that interest and are ready to kind of jump into that. So you find your niche in the world.
Say it again, Carole Tarrant.